Hello and a very warm welcome back to my YouTube channel. Now, there can be no doubt that Brexit Britain is a country which is fast going down the toilet. Despite high population growth, Britain's GDP growth has been nothing short of anemic. However, it's not just the economy that is going down the toilet. Pretty much everything in Britain is going down the toilet. In this video, I will explain why I feel Brexit Britain is now the worst of all worlds, and why I think if you're either ambitious or have any sort of wealth, now is the right time to leave. And if you are a foreign investor, do not even consider putting any money in this toilet economy. Now, please, in the comments below, let me know if you agree or disagree with my points. So, I would firstly like to talk about tax levels, which in Britain are at the highest level in living memory. Corporation tax at 25% is well above the European average. Moreover, so many more people are paying income tax at a rate of 40% on a part of their salary. So, if, for example, you earn £125,000 a year, you're going to be paying over £42,000 in tax to the government, for which you get very little in return. And inheritance tax at 40% is one of the highest in the world. So, in effect, you could eventually be paying 64% tax on your earnings. With a new Labour government as well, which is very left wing, I think taxes are just going to keep going up. And if capital gains tax are brought nearer in line with income tax rates, that will be the end of any incentive to invest, especially without indexation allowance. Now, another reason to get out of Britain is the high levels of crime. Knife crime is on the rise, and according to the Office of National Statistics, crime experienced by individuals in England and Wales went up by over 10% over the last year. And shoplifting in the UK is now rampant, even in so called nice areas. Now, all this is leading to many millionaires leaving the UK. In fact, by the end of 2024, 9,500 high net worth individuals will be leaving the UK, according to the Henley Private Wealth Migration Report, with most moving to the EU. And this is the second highest number in the world. And UBS predicts the UK will lose most millionaires compared to other countries by 2028, meaning less tax revenues for the government. Now let's come to Brexit, which has been an unmitigated disaster. Now, since Brexit happened, the UK has not managed to sign any free trade deal of any significance, whilst at the same time leaving the largest free trade area in the world has resulted in UK GDP being approximately 4 to 5% lower. And just think about this. Turkey, which is in the customs union, has a better trading relationship with most of Europe than Brexit Britain. And Brexit Britain is now no longer seen as a gateway to Europe for business. Brexit has also resulted in more boat crossings from France as Britain left the Dublin Conventions. And legal numbers are far higher, partly as a result of more migrants coming in from third world countries with higher birth rates. Now, let's talk about public services. Despite very high taxes in the UK, public services are terrible. Hospital waiting lists are well above the 7 million mark, and it can easily take 3 weeks or more to see your local doctor, general practitioner. Schools are also crumbling in the UK, and with the new VAT rate of 20% on private school fees, this will only lead to more pressure on comprehensive schools. And the condition of many of Britain's roads also leave a lot to be desired. Potholes are a huge problem. According to the RAC, there are currently more than 1 million potholes in the UK, which cause damage to vehicles and, in many instances, lead to injuries and even death, especially for cyclists. Now, I also want to talk about Britain no longer being a rich country, especially if you take away London and the southeast. In fact, according to the World Bank, GDP per capita purchasing power parity in the UK is now lower than the EU average. In other words, living standards in the UK are now below the EU average. And this does not even take into account public services such as hospitals, schools, and roads, which, as you know, are in a terrible state, or an appalling state in the UK. And it is predicted by 2030, Poland will overtake the UK when it comes to living standards. And both Bulgaria and Romania will also, on current trends, have higher living standards than the UK by the year 2040. So, really, the UK is looking totally shambolic. Now, I want to go into more detail as to why I think Brexit Britain is the worst of all worlds. Recently, or fairly recently, there were riots in Britain following the tragic murder of three young girls in Southport. And what struck me was the age of the rioters. Normally, they tend to be teenagers or perhaps early 20s. However, the rioters in this case were across all ranges from 12 to people even in their late 60s, suggesting a dissatisfaction across a very broad range of society in Britain. And there were also a lot of women involved as well. But perhaps the more worrying aspect is that Britain seems to be losing its freedoms, or at least the people are having more difficulty in having free speech. Of course, I think many of these rioters deserved long prison sentences for their actions. Especially, I think the violent ones, they deserve long sentences. But what about a woman that was jailed for 20 months for pushing a wheelie bin at a line of riot police before falling quite comically on her face? Or the gay couple that were jailed for 20 months for dancing and gesticulating at a line of police officers? Or others who posted things online, I guess, that were not great, but some even got more than 3 years sentences. And I think one has to ask, is this justice, or is this creeping censorship? It does feel as though in the UK you have to be careful about everything you say. I myself have been told off for saying the word actress. And the UK is a country that is not at peace with itself. And often, if you express an opinion which does not toe the government line, you can expect yourself to be in hot water, which was never the case a few years ago. And the mentality in the UK seems to have changed. If you work hard and have built a successful business, you were praised just a few years ago. But now things have changed. In the last few years, anybody who has wealth is seen by many as the enemy. There's the slogan, tax the rich. But let's be honest, the rich are already paying the most tax. So the top 1% contribute 30% of tax revenues. So if you drive them out, who is going to fund all the infrastructure, i.e., hospitals, schools, and I think the taxes are just going to fall on everybody else. So I think this is not good. Now, if you are a pensioner, you could consider retiring to the south of Italy, perhaps in one of the towns with less than 20,000, like the beautiful seaside place of Praia Mare in Puglia, where you qualify for the low 7% retirement tax rate. Remember, too, the weather and food are better in Italy than the UK. And inheritance tax is much lower. So up to €1 million, you pay no inheritance tax. And above that, you only pay 4% if you leave your wealth to your children. And if you're a young high earner with a lot of ambition, perhaps you can move to Dubai and work and pay 0% income tax. So, if instead of using the example before, if you earn £125,000, instead of paying over £42,000 in tax, you're going to pay zero. And life actually in a place like Dubai is cheaper than many UK cities, especially London. Now, of course, these are only two countries that I've mentioned. You could move to many other countries. There are so many countries to consider. And it's actually beyond the scope of this video. And perhaps I may do another video on this. But one thing we have to conclude, unfortunately, Britain is becoming really the worst of all worlds. Brexit, a very hard left wing government. Also, free speech is starting to go as well. And I think the future doesn't look good. But please let me know if you agree or disagree in the comments below. Anyway, thanks for watching, and I shall see you very soon on the next video.